My name is Lisa Nestor. I am the research director at the Future of Digital Currency Initiative, and I'm going to be your MC today. So I'll be working us through each of our 3 sessions and then guiding you to the networking event at the end of our programming. So to get started, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Paul Toback, the Executive Director of FDCI, to give us a warm introduction. Here you go, Paul.
Thank you, Lisa. Warm introduction coming your way. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it. How are the slides working? Do I work them or nobody knows? I'm going to work them. All right, so welcome. We appreciate you coming. This is our biennial conference. It's not our biannual conference. I did learn the difference. So we did this about 2 years ago, and it's our hope that we'll begin to do these a little bit more frequently, hopefully annually, with some events intermixed that'll give us an opportunity to showcase the research we're doing, get feedback from people, let members meet and mingle with each other. So we're excited about that, and hopefully you'll love the presentations that we have today. We have 3 forums going, and as Lisa said, she's going to be the moderator. So for those of you who don't know a lot about FDCI, we are not FDIC. We are the Future of Digital Currency Initiative. Sometimes even we get the acronym missed a little bit. And our mission is that we're Stanford University's interdisciplinary research initiative. And we are dedicated to understanding how digital currency and emerging technologies are reshaping the future of the financial systems. And importantly, through collaboration with industry, policymakers, and academic partners, we translate research into practical insights that help inform innovation, policy, and the evolution of global financial infrastructure. So that's a lot, but basically the research we do, we take pride in the fact that it actually is impactful and useful, things that people can actually put into practice. And so rather than just being an esoteric think tank, we're actually doing work that people can use and commercialize as well. Our principles are pretty basic. These are what guide us. We focus on interoperability, scalability, security, financial inclusion, policy and governance, and privacy. So with these principles in mind, that's kind of what guides our work. And then the work that we do really falls into what we're now calling 4 pillars. So we're focusing our work on infrastructure, digital assets and tokenization, markets and settlement, and adoption and governance. And for those of you who've had the chance to pick up we have a packet that summarizes the research we've done. It talks a little bit more about the subcategories behind each principle, and then you can see a list of all the research topics that we've done. We've really had, we're very proud of the work that's been done in the last 12 months, probably our most productive 12 months in terms of research that we've initiated or completed. So take a look at that. And of course, as David says, always looking for new ideas and new topics to research from anybody who has them. Our approach is really multidisciplinary. You know, when we first started, we had a more technological focus, but really we are multidisciplinary. We've partnered with the Stanford Law School, Stanford Business School. We, of course, are based out of Stanford Engineering and Computer Science. And with that multidisciplinary approach, it's really allowed us to both broaden the research we do and allow us to see from multiple perspectives how would some of the governance issues affect and impact some of the technology that we're doing, and vice versa. As David says, you know, if they think there's a problem that can't be solved, there might be a technological solution that the non-computer scientists haven't thought of, and we could. So we're proud of that approach. Leadership team, you've already met Lisa. You've met me and heard my warm introduction. And then you'll meet David Mazieres, who's our faculty lead and professor running the program in a minute. We're also really proud of the faculty leadership team we have. Again, it kind of reflects the multidisciplinary approach with faculty from the computer science department, from management science and engineering, Daryl Duffy from the business school, and Jeff Stranad, who some of you may or may not have met at the reception in the middle here. He's got his own conference running across the way from the Stanford Law School. So again, the way we connect all these disciplines together. We have a good group of outside advisors as well. We're really proud of the work and the help they're doing. I'll highlight the guy who brought me into this event. Jonathan Padilla is right there. He's one of the co-founders, and so JP is one of our great advisors, outside advisors as well. And of course, a lot of the work wouldn't really be done without our great group of postdoc and graduate students who are doing a lot of the technical work. I'd like to take a minute to thank our members. Structurally, this is an interesting thing, a Stanford affiliate program. We are Stanford employees, we work for Stanford, but basically all the funding for our program and our research comes from our membership sales. So people who join us as members, people say, what do you get? Well, you get the opportunity to support the great research. You get an opportunity to have impact on the research we're doing. You also get a first look at some of the research we're doing. So there's a lot of value, but in the end, without the support of our members, the work we do couldn't happen. And I would just say basically 90% of the money that comes in through membership fees, with the exception of probably 1.5 small salaries, goes to all research, to supporting postdocs doing actual research. So thank you very much to all of our members. For those who represent members who are here today, we really appreciate everything you've done to support us. And then my part would not be complete if I did not do a shameless pitch to try and get more members. As you just heard, that's really the lifeblood of our organization. We have 3 membership tiers, which we've been playing with to try and be supportive of new companies as well as established companies. Our full membership is a $250,000 a year membership, which we've priced, we believe, to be very market competitive in the hopes of getting a lot of people to join. But we also have added a startup and a transition membership. The startup membership is for new companies that are either in the first 2 years of business or in their first round of capital raise. And that's a 1-year membership only, but it lets you get started with us for $50,000 and then a transition to $100,000 for a second-year company. So hopefully that lets newer companies get excited, get access to us and the brain trust that we've created, but also give us really good impact and feedback about what's going on in the marketplace. So if anybody here who's not a member would love to join, happy to talk to you afterwards. If you know anybody who is interested, last minute of the shameless pitch, please make sure that you see me. All right, with that said, let me introduce the guy who founded this and who runs it, computer science professor David Mazieres, who's going to take over from here.
Thanks a lot, Paul. And thank you, everyone, for coming here. So, I've been, at heart, I'm an operating systems person, right? And I've been doing operating systems research for over 30 years now. And the reason I'm so drawn to operating systems is that they really kind of determine what you can and can't do with your computer, like what functionality is reserved for like privileged programmers or users, or what can everybody access, what can be done efficiently, what can be done inefficiently, because you have kind of mismatched interfaces to what you want to do. What kinds of vulnerabilities the systems are going to have, what kind of bugs, what kind of mistakes people are going to make over and over again. All of this is controlled by the operating system, which has influence over everybody building stuff on top of that. And, in many ways, money is the operating system for capitalism, basically. And that's, there's ways that I'm kind of used to thinking of it, like, if you control interest rates, you can have a huge impact on like people's, desire to invest. There's also weird, artifacts, like if you're running a vending machine that takes coins, like you're going to need to like quantize your prices to the most popular coins, or like your sales are going to go down just because it's like inefficient to make other denominations of payment, or like if cross-currency payments are like really clunky, then you're actually going to discourage economic activity that would cross borders. Unfortunately, one thing that we've seen is that, like, if you have, for example, irreversible payments, like in the form of like, gift cards for like the Apples, or for Amazon or whatever, or cryptocurrency, that creates an entire market in like fraud and pig butchering, for example. Well, so anyway, FDCI's goal, or at least certainly my goal in being involved in FDCI, is to influence this operating system and to try to make it as open as possible, right? And to prove to people that it can be more open than they kind of initially think, right? And the reason for that is the more open this thing is, it's going to facilitate innovation, it's going to facilitate competition, opportunity, and ultimately fairness, I think. So in the past, we've had, this isn't the first time we've had this event. We've had a lot of focus historically on innovation in kind of low-level mechanisms, right? So kind of historically, we've had a large thrust of work that's basically demonstrating the technical feasibility of doing things that we used to do in kind of centralized systems and showing that it actually works in an open, decentralized system, right? And so part of that is showing performance and scalability, right? People didn't think that, for example, blockchains could scale, and yet we built a DEX that is essentially arbitrarily scalable, can get, many hundreds of thousands of trades per second. We've built a smart contract platform that's completely horizontally scalable. You tell me how many transactions per second you want, and I'll tell you how many computers you need per validator, right? So it's just a question of buying more hardware. We've also shown that you can do native smart contracts, right? So if you don't like the encryption algorithms that are available in the native contracts on a blockchain, well, now you can implement your own crypto, and therefore you can innovate more because you can use just, a smart contract is just native like ARM code or x86 machine code. We've also kind of shown functionality, right? Like things like, as an example, we had a project where we showed how to do sealed bid auctions on a public blockchain, right? Which wasn't something that was like obviously practical before, and we showed actually it works pretty well. So another thrust of our research has been studying efficient market mechanisms, things like automated market makers. And then another component of the research has been doing kind of empirical studies of markets or stablecoin usage, getting data that can show the potential impact and desirability of these new technologies. But honestly, like everything is not great today. And I think like right now we actually see that like kind of faith in capitalism is actually kind of going down, right? And this is something that I think should concern all of us, or at least those of us who are capitalists. And certainly the reason I'm a capitalist is that I think capitalism yields, it can yield a very efficient allocation of resources because it's so good at aggregating people's preferences, right? And certainly empirically it works better than any other system we've tried. So I really hope we don't revert to an alternative. But of course, we have to be honest that capitalism breaks down in like certain regions of the parameter space, right? Like at the large end, if you have like monopolies and like rent-seeking entities, like that's a problem. At the small end, like, if your company's worth $100,000, like you cannot be publicly traded because like the system just doesn't scale down. It's too inefficient to do that. If there's asymmetric information, that's really bad. So we don't like, insider trading or even scams, right? When there's negative externalities, that's a problem. Things like, pollution or systemic risk. And I think kind of like one of the trickiest ones is that like if people can hack the human brain, then like maybe capitalism doesn't work. Like if you can sell people opiates, like that doesn't work out well. So for all these things, like we need regulation, right? So capitalism needs regulation, and I think, whether we like it or not, like we're going to get a lot of regulation that impacts like the stuff that like everybody in this room cares about, so probably in 2 years, for example. And so we really have to make sure, so we have to be honest that like, for example, blockchain and a lot of the technologies we're working on, they can like really address some of these problems and like expand the parameter space where things work. And it can also exacerbate the problems, right? Like we got to be honest about that. And we really have to make sure that we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Or even worse, like worse than throwing out the baby with the bathwater, getting some kind of regulation that entrenches the existing like rent-seeking entities and things like that. And so what that means is we need to kind of normalize this blockchain technology and like really demonstrate its benefits in a way that like people can understand well beyond people who are interested in like the kind of technical details of financial transactions. Kind of to my dismay, I see a lot of people who are, like center-left people that I follow who are like very thoughtful about a number of things. When they talk about blockchain, it's like they're frozen in 2013. They looked at it and they're like, oh, I don't like this. And then they just like completely ignored like the last decade of improvements and all the things. They just totally don't get what it can do. So we need to help people understand like what this technology can do, that it has fundamentally new capabilities, the ability to have these like tamper-resistant logs, the ability to have atomic transactions across systems that like don't trust each other, weren't even intended to work together. And the fact that like this could all happen through, these things could all interoperate through money, because usually you do want these financial transactions, I think can allow all kinds of innovation and things that were just not practical to do before. and this also means like facilitating new applications. Right now we also have to think about AI, right? And obviously we want AI to realize its full potential. And that means giving it access to money, and that means making sure that that's safe and that like we can understand it and we can control it, and it's not going to create more systemic risk, and it's not going to create victims who like lose all their money. And so all of these are challenges that we're thinking about throughout Stanford, and of course I'm from the engineering school, so I'm also thinking particularly about the engineering innovations that can actually address these problems. So I guess for our first talk, we're going to have Ihyun Nam, who's a PhD student in the computer science department. And this talk is like a little bit further afield from the kinds of talks she had before. She's going to talk about authentication logging, right? And the idea here that like you want to make sure that you know like every place that your credentials have been used. This is already important because account compromise is such a huge problem and often leads to massive data breaches, kind of the first domino in many big data breaches. And it's also important, of course, because of AI now, because we want to be able to like delegate our credentials, and this becomes extra important to know what those have been used for. So let me turn it over to Ihyun to tell you about pass logging. Do you have the slides? Okay, cool.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much,
thanks.
David.